So the professionalism chapter talks a lot, it kind of brings it all together at the end, talking about what an early childhood professional is, the ethics of being a professional, how you continue to learn going forward, and discussing, I guess, next steps for you. So we're going to talk about ethical decisions, talking about your teaching practice, and advocating for children and families. Does anybody have advocating? We don't use that word a lot in our day-to-day lives. Does anybody have an idea what that word might mean, advocating? I can give you a hint. A lawyer, somebody's lawyer, let's say you, somebody rear-ended you and you get a lawyer. Your lawyer would be advocating for you. Yeah, representing.
Talk on your behalf.
Yep, working on your behalf in your best interest. So advocating for children and families is kind of working in the best interest of children and families. Super. All right. So last week we talked about program management and talked about how we use the assessments and the developmental goals to, sorry, hit my table, to steer how we create our lesson plans. So this gets in more to teaching with intentionality, being an intentional teacher. Teaching with a plan instead of just walking into the classroom and saying, you know what, I'll take what comes and we'll work from there. But coming in with a plan instead and being purposeful and thoughtful. We had talked at one point about scaffolding. It's about, so you're making the building. You're making the building. This nice shiny glass building is the child's learning. And you're working on the next level. In order to work on the next level, you have to have scaffolding that supports it and holds it up until it's completed. So when they're talking about scaffolding children's learning, it's supporting the new growth until it's finished and ready to stand by itself. Hope that makes sense. Put this back. Or I'll break it. Okay. Let's get to our next one. There is a 3-step approach for intentional teaching. I am pulling this from page 509. If you do your reading this week, you will see it, but you might want to get your book out anyway, because we are going to be referring to the next few pages in the next few slides. So the 3-step approach for intentional teaching talks about familiarizing yourself with child development and research knowledge to understand the outcomes that are best suited for your kids. So can anybody, let's see, it says that be knowledgeable and observant, understand how children of different ages, dispositions, and interests learn best, and what accommodations you need to make for them. So in all our lessons, on the back of the lesson activity sheet, it talks about what accommodations, what supports are needed for children in your class to be able to accomplish the lesson. Why do you think we need to know about child development to be a good teacher? You can put it in the chat, or you can shout it out. I'm going to wait for at least 3 people in the chat before we move on. Why do you need to know about child development to be a good teacher?
Because not every child is developing the same. They come in at different points in their life, and understanding where they're at can help you help them excel.
Thank you. Amy also put to help you understand a child better. Okay, see where they're coming from. That's 2. Who else has an opinion? Oh, here we go. Jasmine, to monitor each child's milestones and guide them through. Yep, so y'all are all correct. You need to know where child development progresses, at least for the age level that you teach, so that you can be aware of what is normal, appropriate development for a child, and to help children grow. All right, the next one is select targeted desired outcomes for children while planning. It says intentional early educators must be exceptional planners who configure their environment, choose materials, and question children in ways that promote learning. So targeted desired outcomes. For your classroom, where are you selecting your outcomes from? Where are you getting your outcomes for your classroom? Again, I need at least 3 people. Where are you getting the outcomes for your classroom? Where are you choosing those from? Another word for outcome could be objective. Okay, Heather said her school uses Frog Street. They have outcomes and objectives for teachers to choose from for each age group. Thank you, Heather. 2 more people. Where do you get the outcomes and objectives for your classroom when you plan? Where are they coming from? A theme book. Thank you, Lydia. One more. Does the no response mean that we're not using any outcomes or objectives for our classrooms? Oh, here we go. Okay, so Jasmine said, like the activities we created, outside play, free play, sometimes the toys, blocks, music CDs. So for the activities we created, we got our desired outcomes and objectives a lot of the time from Little Texans Big Futures or the CDC developmental milestones. Okay, thank you. And then the last one, learn from the children you teach. Understand that teaching involves following and leading. What do you think that might mean? And you can also look at the bottom of page 509 if you'd like a more in-depth description of that. What do you think it might mean to learn from the children you teach? Teaching involves following and leading. Those are completely different things, aren't they? Following somebody and leading somebody? How do they both work with teaching?
I think it's like knowing when to like kind of allow the children to make decisions, kind of almost like pick and choose your battles sometimes.
Okay, thank you, Juliet. So encouraging children to make decisions would be letting them lead, right? So you'd be following. Let me see what we in the chat. Amber said everyone learns differently, so they might learn a different way from how you teach. Deborah said, go by what they're interested in, so letting them take the lead in what they want to learn. Heather said, every child is different. So what works for some children in your classroom won't work for everybody. Great, thank you all for participating. I appreciate it.
And also, you can also learn from the kids too. Maybe the thing that they do can help you in your future classes. Like, oh, okay, I did this activity, but they wanted to turn around and do it this way. Maybe I can try, that seemed more fun to them. So maybe in the next class, you can try and do it their way. If not, then go back to your way. Because you learn from the kids every day.
So you try it and you're like, well, that didn't work. Let me make a note and I'll try it again a different way tomorrow, or maybe later today after nap time, after I've recovered my shock. All right, thank you, Miss Lydia. All right, let's look on page 510. There is a figure at the top of page 510 that has 6 bullet points in it that are the characteristics of intentional teaching. I'd like you to choose 2 of those characteristics and think about how they relate to your classroom. Okay, so we're going to do this in the chat. So it's going to be a very full chat. I'd like everybody to have a go at it. And maybe let's start with one. Everybody put one characteristic and how it applies to your classroom. Okay, everybody choose one, and we're going to put it in the chat. Choose one of these characteristics and how it applies in your classroom.
Good morning.
Okay, Lydia, you said engaging activities. How does that apply to your classroom?
It applies to my classroom because you can learn from the activities, and also you want it to be engaging, because if they lose interest in it, like they're not getting nothing out of it. They're not learning anything. They're just like, eh. But if it's interesting to them, they're gonna, put more effort into it, and they're gonna learn as well as figure out other ways to work with the materials. So the more engagement they have, the more they're learning versus just sitting there like, I'd see my kids like, nah, and then we have to change it. So that's how I think engaging activities help them learn.
Thank you. All right, our next one on here is Heather, high expectations. Heather, how does that apply to your classroom?
Well, I have an infant classroom, so we have high expectations of all the infants to reach certain milestones, not at the same time, but at different times. So we make sure that we have all the praises, encouraging words. Come on, you can do it. Let's move this way. Let's do that. You come on. And so to me, I feel that's high expectations that we put on them, and encouraging to get them to be capable of doing everything that they can do, and letting them know we believe in them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Liz, I see you put feedback. Tell me about how that works in your classroom.
I actually work with the toddlers. And sometimes I get like for example, on circle time, like I'm sitting down with them. And then this is actually one thing that happened to me recently. Sometimes when I'm sitting down with circle time, I have a little boy. He likes to be by himself and he wanders, right? So then I have another person that, another wonder. So everybody thinks that just because they see one child, they like to be, wandering around. And I don't, I want to hear feedbacks on how can I, work on that. Like when I'm doing circle time.
It's feedback.
Because I have two wonders, and then the rest of the kids like, oh well, why? Because I have a little boy, and she's like, the little boy had asked, is like, why are they playing and why over here? So I had to explain the little boy. I was like, we're learning, So I wanted to hear a little bit of feedback on how can I work on myself on that situation.
So I'm hearing that you get feedback from the children, by the children saying, hey, how come they're getting to do this? And you're also wanting feedback from other
teachers.
professionals
Right.
and how to address the opportunity.
Right.
And if you want to get into that during study hall today, we can totally go there.
Okay.
All right. Amy said, high expectations. I believe that kids are way more capable than they think, and I want them to know that. Super. Angelica, feedback helps you understand where the kids are in the classroom and the areas where you can improve. Wonderful. Myra, engaging activities. How does this apply in your classroom, Myra? Oh, maybe Myra has stepped away. Okay. Thank you for everybody that participated. I appreciate it. Some of the ones that were not mentioned are planning and management. So planning is hard because a lot of the time we don't have a period of time where we can step out of the classroom and still be on the clock and do our planning for the upcoming day or the upcoming week. Management is also a big deal, as you know, in a classroom, making sure everything runs smoothly and that everybody's safe and cared for. Being learning oriented. Might be a little bit more difficult in an infant classroom to get it across, but definitely in toddlers, letting the children know that you are a learner, they're learners, and every day is an opportunity to figure out more about the world and figure out more about ourselves and each other. The next one that nobody mentioned was thoughtful questioning. Thoughtful questioning can help you figure out why a child did something or help you figure out what they understand or know. And it's just a wonderful way for you to build a relationship and also build language skills with the children. All right, wonderful. All right, we do not have a mirror for me to hand you to write on today. We do have the chat. So on page 511 and 512, we have some bullet points. Take a look at the bullet points. We're not going to do the 3 because, like I said, you don't have your mirror to write on and hold up. But let's at least start with 1. I think 1 is a good place to start. Look at these things for reflection and think about how this reflection influences your teaching. So let's see, I can pick one randomly and give you an example in the chat. How past experiences have influenced you. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Past experience influenced or influences my teaching. And it's kind of back to, I think it was Lydia that said that based on how the children respond to something, that's how I move forward with the activity in the future. So by observing how children respond to activities, I can make the activities better in the future. So that's my example for you on the chat. I chose one of the bullet points. It's the one like right underneath the photograph. It says how past experiences have influenced you. And then I gave an example how. Okay, so everybody find one of these bullet points that speaks to you. and follow the example I gave you in the chat and have a whack at it. Might take you a few minutes to read through all of them first. Okay, we've started getting our first one in. Thank you, Jasmine. That's lovely. I'm trying to limit my talking so you all can focus and think. All right, looks like Amy's posted hers. Heather, if you have a moment and can expand upon that in the chat, that would be super. How it influences your teaching. Thank you. So we've got 3 really good submissions so far. I know everybody can do this. Have a try. Thank you, Angelica. Thank you, Liz. Liz, could you expand and tell how this applies in your classroom?
Yes, sorry, because I'm in the middle of writing it, but that's when you had already mentioned
Oh,
my
sorry.
name.
Go ahead.
And it's okay. The reason why I had picked this bullet was because I am understanding of individual children and their learning and behavior. So basically, in the toddlers room, I actually have 3. I have 3 where one it's a little wandering. He likes to be by himself. The other one likes to be together, engage with others, but he doesn't like. He still mumbles to talk. And the other one, she's super energetic, and she just wants to be up and down with everybody. Like I don't know. I was trying to explain myself in the chat, but that's when you had to call my name.
That's a lot to explain in the chat, so it's just as well.
Yeah.
You got.
Yes. So that's why you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that have said something so far. I know we have more than 5 in this group right now. We have 22 people in this group. Means I'm missing somebody. Missing two.
So mine would be almost like Liz's. Like I'm gonna try to use like the end of the day as an example because I'm still in pre-K during the day. So like I have like toddlers who are like because this one like since like there's like all these like baby dolls in all the classrooms, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go straight to baby dolls. Like that's what I like that's it. And then like some of them are like still like shy about it, and then I have one that's like just like the exploring type. Like he's just like wandering around the room, just like, what do I do? So mine is like almost like Liz's, just like me. I'm just trying to like think. Like I know I'm not answering like much, but because I'm still in pre-K, so I'm like, what do I do when I'm in toddlers?
And it's all about, like Liz said, understanding individuals, right? So the one fix isn't going to work for all the children.
Yeah.
Miss Deborah, let's see. That's great that you can use 2 languages in your classroom with the children. Let's give it a minute or 2 more. Let's see if we can get a few more people to respond to this.
I don't really like to be the person to be like, oh yeah, same, that same bullet point.
It's okay.
But I do agree with them. Not because my children go everywhere and they're crazy sometimes, but because like when we get a new kid, they're new to the class and they're scared sometimes. And I believe like if you comfort them and welcome them, they'll learn to grow with the class and be more welcomed. For example, I have one little girl when she came, she was nannied and she doesn't have any younger anybody's. And she was so scared. She would not leave our laps. She would not eat. She would not play. She would just sit there. And if we left her, she would cry. And if you would see the growth she has right now, she plays. She's very social. She eats very well. Not at home, but here at the daycare. She talks very well. She's very smart. And I was in a span of maybe 6 months. The difference, it was a whole different person. And I
That's
believe
wonderful.
like being, I don't know, like just the different ways of teaching her compared to other kids. Some of the other kids were used to it. They've been there many times. And I don't know. I just think
it sounds like you
has
all
a
really
different way.
formed a bond with her, and she felt confident exploring the room after you all had formed that bond.
Yeah. It does happen to other kids too. Like we've had multiple kids. She's just one of the examples.
Thank you. Oh wow, we got 4 in just now. Wonderful, ladies. Thank you very much for participating. Everybody put a lot of thought into their response. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, let's go on to our next bit. So if you are a reflective, and reflective is perhaps when you think of looking in a mirror, seeing a reflection, looking at yourself, taking time and considering what you do, how you do it, is being reflective. Thank you, Myra. Reflective educators are better at slowing down and taking a look at how they teach. They're better at discovering patterns in children's behaviors, figuring out how to translate theory or maybe a developmental goal into an activity, a theory into a practice, determining whether they are being professional at the moment. You know, when you've had a day at work and you come home and you pause and think about, how did I handle myself today? Was I being very teacherly? Was I being very reactive? Thinking about that so you can respond differently, better next time. Recognize and change behaviors that aren't consistent with how you want to be as a teacher. So if you believe that you want to be very supportive and inclusive in your practice, and you reflect on and say, you know what, I didn't really make lessons that included these kids today. I need to make sure I include them tomorrow. Determining whether your lesson taught what you were trying to teach. So sometimes we have that goal that we make as a part of our lesson, and a reflective teacher at the end of the lesson will assess the children and say, did I teach that so that you learned what I was trying to teach? A reflective educator can uncover issues that could be impacting the children's learning. Issues can be all sorts of things. It could be, like they're saying, a really active child. It could be a child that is new and needs to form a bond before they can engage in anything in the classroom. And then using multiple sources of information to influence how you teach. So every year you do all sorts of trainings, right? You attend maybe a voices training, you attend something like CDA. Perhaps you're going to the Saturday Academy that we're having on April 30th. If anybody wants to know more about it, let me know. But taking all those different sources of information and having them influence things that you think need to be made better in your classroom. Those are all things being reflective can do to help you in your classroom. We're going to get back to this. The writings, I like to do those more towards the end. So we'll come back to that one. All right, we're now going to get into ethics. When you think of the word ethics, that person has ethics. What does that mean to you? What does that word mean to you, ethics? It's not a word we use a lot.
Someone that has principles, like, morals, good morals, good
Yeah.
principles.
So we'll often switch out the words morals. That person has good morals, right? We use that much more, I think, than ethics. Principles, also a really good word. Jasmine also put in the comments that being ethical is being a good human being, knowing right from wrong. All good answers, ladies. Thank you. Remember last class, I took you to the NAEYC website. That's that big organization that is for the US, our national membership group for early educators. They have a code of ethical conduct. See, you got it, Heather. Rules of how you go about your day. Their code of ethical conduct outlines professional responsibilities for being an educator. Can anybody give me an idea of what you think a rule of conduct for being an educator could be? What is a rule that you think you live your life by as a teacher?
To me, is honest. I like to represent myself as, being an honest person and respectful. It's a big thing for me. I like
Because you want people to be honest and respectful for you too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Even if I don't get that respect, I feel that it's my, I don't know, that's just, I just love to respect others. Even though sometimes, sadly, we don't get that same respect. But when you have that ethic in you, it's just, it comes out naturally.
Thank you, Myra. So we have honest, respect. Heather had put that the phone shouldn't be used in the classroom. So keeping, another way of phrasing that could be like keeping your attention on the kids instead of distractions. So another way I could even say that could be like keeping your focus on the children. So being focused on children instead of your phone. Anything else that we live our lives by as early childhood teachers?
For me, it's listening, because
Okay.
if you're not listening, then how can you learn from another's mistake, or how can you be attentive to someone else's needs?
And I'm going to add observing to that too, because you had mentioned paying attention to what's going on. Listening, observing. Okay, thank you, Alicia.
I was gonna say aware, which is kind of like ties into observing, listening, and being focused. Because I feel like every time like I step into the classroom, I'm always aware like of like where all the kids are at the same time. Like, okay, this kid's right here, this kid's right here, this kid's right here, and then you like do something, and then you're like, wait, where is everyone? And then you're just constantly just doing that, especially because like I'm in the mobile infants and they just like struggle, like they go around like by themselves, like
So awareness, and you're talking about awareness of physical, where everybody is physically, but
yeah.
also when you walk into that room, Christina, you're also taking a read of the emotions in the room, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, how am I walking? Is everybody really stressed? Is everybody really chillaxed and calm? It makes a difference how you approach a situation.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We've got a good list going.
Actually, that happened to me with the toddlers, because I have 10 toddlers, and like she said, like as soon as I'm doing something, I need to like count heads. I'm like, oh my god, okay, like is everybody here? Like, okay, let's do this. And even when we go outside, like, I count, I count them, and then when we go in, I'm like, okay, everybody's here. Okay, good.
I'm going to add to that because
I
you
agree.
said that, Liz, physical safety. That's a big deal for us, isn't it? Keep everybody physically safe.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. When we go outside, that's like I always count them. And even sometimes too, like I always count them because sometimes, they're learning how to, like, one of them already learned how to open the gate. So
Oh,
I
that's
constantly,
exciting.
yes. So I need to always have an eye on her because she already learned how to open the gate. So it's constantly, counting. I'm like, okay, I have 10.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Can't
And
lose
then
anybody.
yes, and then going back too, because when we go back, they like to hide behind the toys, behind the cabinets. Sometimes I had one where he was hiding behind the door on the restroom. I was like, oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack. So, yeah.
Yeah, physical safety is a huge one for us. Emotional safety could also be considered. Letting children know that it's okay to have emotions and that you're there to support them. All right, does anybody have anything we want to add to this list? It's looking pretty good. We have honesty, respect, focus on children instead of telephones, listening and observing the environment, being awareness of physical placement of children and their emotions, physical safety of children, emotional safety of children. Do you have any rules for how you interact with families? Or any ethics, I should say, in how you
I do, because I have some parents that I guess throughout the school year have, I guess, became comfortable with us. So like certain, or at least with me, certain parents would joke around like, "Oh, was she bad today?" Or just making a joke out of it. And some are like very serious, like, "Oh, she did. I'm so sorry," and like, or, "Oh, she did that so good." Like it's just it's for me, it's different ways of talking to the parents. Either you feel comfortable with that parent, you joke around and be like, "Oh yeah, she rolled her eyes today," but how we say it, and they're like laughing instead of to, versus you can't say that to another person, like, "Oh my God," like, they'll take offense to it. So for me, I have a rule about getting to know your parents first, see how they react, see how they talk with you, and then, go ahead and let that um dismay what you say and how you act with parents.
That makes sense. And Amy said, always stay positive when talking about the child. Heather said, wording is very important. Layla, always smile. Jasmine, if there was a bite, scratch, never say the child that did it. Prevents arguments between the families. That works right up until the child can tell on them. Miss Jasmine. But yeah, you would never say, that Lydia, she bit your kid today. She's a bad egg, that Lydia. All right. So that goes over our rules of ethics for interacting with families. Do you have any rules or ethics for how you interact with your colleagues, your co-teachers, or anybody else that works at the center? Honesty. Thank you, Heather. I'm interested to see what you all put for this one, because there's a lot of different ways this could go. Do you have any ethical rules that you live by in how you interact with other people that work at the center? Being respectful. Thank you, Brandy. Being considerate of each other's
Yes,
feelings.
I agree with Brandy. Respectful.
I know in my classroom, there is a total of 3 teachers in there. And as each of my new teachers came in, I always made it very important that we needed to be honest with each other. If someone had an issue with something, that the way something was being done, we needed to address it with each other so we could explain why we do it this way or why it's not appropriate to do it this way. I am very anti-drama. I do not want it in my classroom. I do not want it in my workplace, around me. So yes. So I always believe that if we can be honest with each other, and then we can explain why we're doing what we're doing, or why it might be easier, or why it might be wrong, it makes things go a lot smoother. And it's worked well for me. My classroom has been like the dream team.
That's wonderful.
Also, too, communication. Also, communicate with your teachers.
Communication and being considerate really helps out when you get a group of people together, working in the same environment, especially when one of them is supposed to be a higher rank than the other one. Does anybody, or has anybody heard their director give a rule that you can't fight in front of the children? Kind of like, some parents have that rule to not fight in front of their child. That coworkers shouldn't throw down in front of the children either. It sounds like y'all are a lot more respectful than some of the situations I may or may not have been in. You haven't seen a fight? I had at a center which will not be named ever, not pre-K for SA, but another center. I did have one teacher that got so angry that she just stormed off and left the kids on the playground with the other teacher. She's just like, nope, not having it anymore. Do it yourself. I was like, okay. All right, so those are a lot of things that we keep in mind as we are interacting with the other people around us daily. The first principle of the Code of Ethics for NAEYC is that we do no harm to children. It's kind of like the code that doctors live by, to do no harm. So we shall not participate in practices that are emotionally damaging, physically harmful, disrespectful, degrading, dangerous, exploitive, or intimidating to children. I think what you all mentioned about being supportive and honest and respectful go a long way in not harming children and keeping them safe. All right, would anybody be interested for me to pull that up real quick? I don't think it'd take but a minute. And it's also 9:53. While I'm pulling it up, do you all want to take a 5-minute break? So we'll come back like a couple minutes to 10, go potty, and I'll pull up an example of the NAEYC Code of Ethics for us to take a look at.
Yes.
Go for it. Pause this. Okay, so for those of you that are back already, I pulled up the NAEYC Code of Ethical Conduct. It is a big document, but it does have some things in bold and highlighted and bullet points to kind of get across what they're trying to share. So it talks about the core values for an early childhood educator, and those are right here. Appreciate that childhood is unique and a valuable stage of development. Base our teaching on knowledge of how children develop. Appreciate and support the bond between a child and their family. Recognize that children are best understood within the context of their family, culture, and community. Respect the dignity, worth, and uniqueness of each child, family member, and colleague. Recognize that children and adults achieve their full potential in the context of relationships that are based on trust and respect. All of those should sound delightful to you. It then goes into ideals. So it breaks down each of these little bullet points here. And we're not going to get into all of it, but I just kind of wanted to show you how they made it work. So this first one is ethical responsibilities to children, where childhood is a unique stage of development that should be appreciated. So it's talking about, as an educator, that you use assessment, that you maintain healthy and safe settings, that you recognize that each child is unique and full of potential. There's the "we shall not harm children" thing right there. We're going to be positive and socially responsible. Then it talks about families here, which is interesting. So for families, it talks about being familiar with how to work with families, develop relationships of trust and with partnership and partner with families. Welcome all family members and encourage them to participate in your program. Listen to families, respect dignity and preferences of families. Acknowledge that families may have different child rearing values than you. Let's see what else. Yeah, so this really gets into it. If this is something that you'd be interested in reading through all of yourself. I Googled NAEYC. I can put it in the chat. I Googled NAEYC Code of Ethics to get this document. And it's a PDF. When I worked for Michigan State University, we had a stripped down version of this, like a one-page document that listed the big ideas, and we had staff read through it and agree to it before they could be in the classroom. Get rid of that. All right. So why did we do all of this discussion, which is delightful and we should do it all the time, but why did we do all, why do we need practice in talking about what we do as teachers? So, jumped a little to the side. Let me fix that and pull up chat again. So if anybody talks to me, I can see it. Great. All right. So articulating best practice, your ability to explain your teaching practice will strengthen you and designates you as a voice of early childhood education in your community. So how do you think you could use, or what opportunities do you have daily to talk about why you do what you do as a teacher? So we talked about, yes, we respect the children and we do counting and we provide emotional security and all these things that we do, but why is it a good idea for you to be able to tell people why you choose to do the things you do as a teacher? Who would you be telling this information to? Communicating with parents, definitely. So if a parent comes up to you and is upset, why did you let my child play in the mud outside today? I told you, my child needs to be very clean all the time. Why did you let them get their hands muddy today? Then you need to be able to share with that parent why you did it. What educational objective were you shooting for? What is the benefit of messy play? And all of that. Any other suggestions on who you could be communicating why you do things the way you do? Who else could you be communicating to?
Your director.
Okay, that would be a big deal, wouldn't it? So the director sometimes will walk in and let's use the muddy hand thing again. Why did you put mud in your sensory table today? And you need to be able to explain yourself, right? And the better you can explain yourself, you could probably win the director over and everybody will get mud in their sensory table. Is there anybody else you could, oh, look at you, Heather, you just keep putting it up. Is there anybody else that you could be communicating these to? And Heather already put, you could be talking to other teachers. When we talked about the code of ethics and interacting with our colleagues, a lot of you mentioned having very honest and open communication with your co-teachers. So being able to tell a co-teacher, I am putting mud in the sensory table because they're going to get this sensory experience, because muddy play is important for this, for that, because I want them to understand more about the properties of mud nature. How does that help that co-teacher? Well, maybe the parent will come up to them and talk. And if they just say, I don't know, Heather just put mud in the sensory table today, and I'm just here to help. That's not helpful. Lydia and Heather also said, explaining what you're doing to children and why. So on our activities that we created, the very first thing after you choose an objective in your materials is, how are you going to explain what we're doing to the kids and why? Why are we doing this? Kids like to know those things. And even if it's somebody that can't talk yet, it's still giving them the practice of receptive listening and hearing you speak in full sentences. And they can usually understand quite a bit more than they can speak at the very beginning. So I think we've hit everybody as far as people you interact with daily, the kids, the director, your other teachers, and families. Can you ever imagine a time when you may have to talk out in the community about what's best for children? And what might that look like? Why might you need to go into the community and share what you know about best practice? Okay, so Heather said it could be meeting that new families are invited to, or that maybe you're having like a center-wide meeting and you're sharing best practice with them about, hey, this is one of the best ways you can build your child's vocabulary. Okay. Other things that could happen are, maybe there's a vote coming up for something. Maybe there's a vote coming up for universal free toddler care. Okay. And your family and friends and other people who know you're a teacher are asking your opinion on it. So you would need to think about what you know about best practice and give them your opinion. You could also be at a conference. So a lot of teachers may choose to present something cool that they've done in their classroom or something cool they've done at their school at a conference. Has anybody ever been to an early childhood conference? Okay, so I can tell you some big ones and some little ones, how they work. It is, they will have usually some advertisements go out, any big event, right? Advertisements go out and you'll see them like on Facebook or posted on maybe a notice board at your school. The director might put up some postings and say, hey, there's a conference for early childhood people coming up in San Antonio. Some conferences are like right in your backyard. Others you have to travel for, but a lot of them can happen right in your backyard. And when they have a conference, on the advertisement, it will say, looking for presenters at a conference. So presenters are the people that do the trainings. Everybody in here has been to trainings, right? You're in a training right now. I'm the presenter for this training, okay? So I'm the person like sharing the information about CDA. That's the presenter. So on these advertisements, you'll see like, I think they call it a call for presenters, like a call for presenters. And if it's, let's say it's a conference on infant and toddler outside play, and you see there's a call for presenters, and the conference is like in 6 months, you could say to your friends and colleagues, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did a project with the kids outside and we took a bunch of photos of it and we wrote down what we did and we share that with everybody. So if you all decide to do that, you would get it all written up and say, hey, we're going to do this project with our infants and toddlers about creating a garden outside and playing in the mud in the sensory table. And we would like to share it with people. So you send in your idea to the conference and they either tell you, awesome, do it, or they'll say, next time. If they say awesome, then you all create your project and get it all pretty. And you show up the day of the conference and you share it with people, and people sit there and they ask questions and they take notes. And that could be a way that you would be sharing best practice as well. If that's something that interests you, make sure to let your director know, because your director in his or her emails, like once a week will get, or maybe that's exaggerating, let's say a couple times a month, we'll get advertisements saying, hey, we would like people to present at this conference in San Antonio. Do you know anybody that wants to do it? And so, yeah, I've helped students I had a university student that was working in the young toddler classroom. And for her conference presentation, she wanted to try out all the make it yourself art things for young toddlers. So she tried making all these different kinds of different paint recipes online, and all the different things like that, and paint recipes for outside. She tried them all and brought them to the conference to share, and everybody loved it. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We want to know how to make those things too. So that is a way you can share it with the community. Okay, Deborah said she had a coworker who did this. He did homemade sensory bottles and toys. Yeah, and you can think, as somebody that goes to a conference and is taking training, you want to see cool stuff that teachers do in their classrooms, right? So it's a win all the way around. All right. So the ability to confidently and clearly explain how children learn, what they should be learning, and your developmentally appropriate teaching practices that support learning and strengthen your family engagement efforts and your outreach and relationships within the community. So being able to say why you do things and what you know about education is really important. You can be a guide, a mentor, a support for so many people. If you got a lot out of this CDA class, you could share with your coworkers, hey, I took this CDA class, it was on Saturdays, and I learned a lot about infant and toddler care, and I got this cool certificate, which I can use to either go further in my professional education, like we were talking about those options of level 2 and associates and stuff, or I'm uncertain when one gets a new degree or certificate, it could be an opportunity to chat with your employer about, hey, I've got this new degree certificate. Is there anything new, interesting that can happen for me because of that? All right. So once you have an idea about how you teach, who you are as an educator, you're going to discover that there's always something new you want to work on, something new you want to make better in your classroom. And that doesn't mean, hey, you're not a good teacher. You need things to work on. We all need things to work on all the time. As human beings, we should always have something that we're working on to be better. Because if you're not working on stuff, if you're not trying to make yourself better, what happens? You get stuck, or heaven forbid, you start going backwards, right? You just start losing skills because you're not really engaged and enjoying yourself. All right. So the last part is talking about advocacy for children. We got into it a little bit about providing information if a vote is coming up, or talking to families at your center about how they can support their children. There's also advocacy opportunities in a community. You could be raising money for causes having to do with children, or you could actively participate in programs that help children. Maybe, I'm not going to give ideas on this one. Let's see if anybody has an idea of some sort of program in the city that you could actually volunteer to help children. Any suggestions on what that might be? A volunteer opportunity to support children and families in our city, what that may be. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just asking, do you have any ideas of what opportunities are available? Off the top of your head? You don't have to know the specific names of them.
I know when I worked for the city, we would give like food away to families.
So like the food bank?
Yeah. And then we would have like art shows on Saturdays for kids to come in with their parents to kind of make it like a family thing. Yeah.
Alrighty, and Jasmine put Sam Ministries, Haven for Hope, Roy Mass Youth Alternatives. I don't know that one. And then Heather said lunch and dinner programs in the summer for children. So there are options, right? And I know at least one of you also works for a religious institution on like a Mother's Day out or a weekend during services. So those are all ways that you can advocate for families and children as well. All right, ladies, I think that is as much as we should get into the professionalism chapter for this class. So I'm going to set this book aside and I am going to I should stop the share. Let me stop the share. All right, I'm going to pull up Le Binder. In Le Binder, which that's a silly way to say it, I shouldn't say that. All right, I'm looking at the class day, April 9th, which you may notice is towards the very bottom of our syllabus / agenda. So I'm looking at April 9th. It says that we need to read the professionalism chapter, which is the last chapter in your book. I hope everybody is actually doing your readings. I know we don't have a way to follow up with that for you. It's an honor system. I can tell you that reading the book will help you on the exam. I can't think of any better motivation to share with you than that. Reading the book will help you with the exam. Full stop. So please do your readings. Feel free to take notes. At a later date, I will be asking you to drop off your books at a pre-K for SA center after you take your exam, okay? I'm not going to ask for them until after you've done your exam. The reason I'm asking for this book back, just this one, okay, you get to keep the yellow one. I'm going to ask for this one back after you take the exam. I'll email you reminders and stuff, but there's a pre-K for SA center on the north side of the city, the south side of the city, east side and west side. Pick whichever one's closest to you. Or if, as you're driving around town, keep this in the back of your back seat. And whenever you pass a pre-K for SA center, you can pull in, go to the front office and say, hey, I'm leaving this for Lillian. Okay, you know my last name too. You can say Lillian McFarland. That'd probably even be more helpful. but you just leave it at the front desk and they'll let me get it. The next class will be using these. So if you don't give it back, it takes more money away from the next class. I'd like you to have it until you do your exam, just so you feel confident going into the exam, but then if you can, please give it back. Any questions on the book? You can either shout them out or put them in the chat. I'm looking in my binder now on that April 9th. I see that we have a CS V1, which is 6, CS V1, A and B. It's writing about professionalism. And last week, if you look up, you'll see professional philosophy statement as well. We didn't get around to that last week. We ran out of time. That's okay. We're going to look at it again today. So we had the professional philosophy statement, and we have CS V1, A and B. And I think that'll get us done for all the writings for the semester. Before we leave today, I also want to go over with you how to put your portfolio in order. Okay, it is important that it's in the correct order, because when we schedule your site visit, the person's going to come and ask for you to hand them the portfolio, and they're going to ask you to hand them this book, both of those. So you can't lose one of them. You have to keep them both until after your site visit. Very important. Okay, so let's start by talking about CS V1, A and B, which focuses on the professionalism chapter. I'm going to pull up that document and share it. And make it a little bigger. Well, maybe not. Pull the chat up so I can see that too. All right. So this is competency statement V1, also known as 6, A and B. So it is broken down. So write 3 paragraphs, okay? Do you see how that happens? Find that document in your binder. Put your eyes on it and make sure you have it, please. I'll also be posting this on our Facebook site. So if you want to type directly into the file, you can do that as well. So like all our competency statements, we're going to begin with talking about, just in general, how we meet the standard for the chapter. The standard is professionalism. So let me get rid of these lines so I can type on it better. Ah, that did not work, y'all. I had it. I clicked one too many times. Okay. I'm going to move this down. All right, so our first paragraph is how it's how we meet the standard. So talking about professionalism, we could say something like, I am a professional because I do these things. So that's one way you could start it. I am a professional educator, because I can't spell today, y'all. And then you would do your 3 examples from the book. What's another way we could phrase this? You could say something like, I demonstrate professionalism in my classroom by, and then give your examples, whichever one speaks to you. So you're going to do this one, or let me put an or here, or this one. Or means you pick one, right? Don't do both. And honestly, for the example, I'm going to take this out because I know that's going to confuse somebody. So I'm going to just leave it there. I demonstrate professionalism in my classroom by, and I'm going to look in the book real quick and see in the professionalism chapter one thing I could write.
Can you tell me what page is it again?
It starts, the chapter starts on page 507. All right, so for your first one, remember when I asked you that figure 85, the characteristics of intentional teaching, you picked one of those? That could be going here. So if you said that you provide engaging activities, and then you give your reason, right? Engaging activities. Keep the children interested and focused on the learning objective. And makes my class a fun place to be. So that's an example, okay? And I pulled that from the figure on page 510. So you could do 3 little examples for how you demonstrate professionalism. So that one was from intentional teaching. Let's see, what else? I could also use, there's on page 513, something that says, I make time for reflection. So I could use that. What else? I could say on page 514, I hold regular discussion groups with colleagues about development. I could look on page 516 and say that I make ethical decisions in my classroom and then explain how. You could say, like on page 520, how you share what you know about child development with the community and how that happens. There's lots of options for this chapter, okay? So you're going to write a little paragraph about how you demonstrate professionalism in your classroom. Does anybody have a comment on this or want any clarification before we move to A?
Okay, so as my understanding, you say you wanted 3 examples, correct?
3 is nice. If
Okay.
you're not feeling 3, 2 would work.
Okay. So like 2 examples from the book?
Yeah, but make sure you don't just put the little bullet point. You want to explain, right?
Okay, yes. Thank you.
The explaining takes up more space on your page too, and that's a good thing. Thank you for the question, Liz. Does anybody else have anything you'd like clarified? Okay, jump in if you do. I'm going to move down to CS1A. This one, let me get rid of these lines again. All right. And I'm going to move that down a little bit more. Reflect on why you chose to be an early childhood professional. This is very personal for everybody, isn't it? Your choice for what career you chose to pursue. So I can put my personal reason. I chose to become an early childhood professional because my mother started a daycare when I was in 5th grade. And I was the main helper. I worked in all the classrooms, including the kitchen. And learned to love teaching and interacting. Okay, so that's like a personal thing. Y'all can't write that unless that's your life story, right? So figure out why you chose to go into early childhood. You can't tell me you went into early childhood to get rich. I won't believe you. So why did you choose this field? What speaks to you about it? Okay. Does anybody need or want clarification on this? I would probably put another sentence or two personally, just so it looks like I put some more thought into it. So I'm going to actually put the word example here because I don't want anybody writing this and being confused. All right, let's go down to B. All right, reflect on what you believe are the most important indicators of professionalism you possess. I'm going to take these lines out. And this is going to make us go back to the textbook. So this one, you should put 3 examples. So I could say something like, I advocate for children. And then explain how. I share my knowledge. I can't spell today, y'all. Okay, so we talked about advocating. I reflect on my practice. I set aside time while driving home. So I am ethical. I don't talk about the children outside of school. I maintain openness and honesty with my families. Okay, do you see how I did that? I did the 3 bullets and then explained. You can use the same 3 bullets if you want, but your explanation needs to be different. I'm going to save this as an example. Any questions or comments on this before we move on?
No.
Okay, I think this one will be a pretty quick one for y'all to do. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And now I'm going to pull up the professional philosophy statement. See if you can put your eyes on your professional philosophy statement in your binder. And I'm going to get rid of these lines because they don't work when you type. Ooh, so many lines, y'all. Almost there. One more line. On delay. All right. So here is what your professional philosophy statement looks like. Hopefully everybody has their eyes on it. Somebody asked me if I took attendance yet. I did not. Do you want to do that real quick? We can do that real quick. Let me stop the share. Let me pull up my attendance list. Stop recording. Great. All right. So this professional philosophy statement has 3 parts. That means to me that you should write at least 3 paragraphs, 1 paragraph for each part. Can you do more? Yes. Can you do less? No. At least 3 paragraphs, okay? So if I was doing this, I would literally copy down and make myself little reminders of what each paragraph has to be. I think it's important when you're writing things to always go back and see what is the question really asking before you start writing. So this way that'll help me remember what the different questions are, okay? Like I said before, this one will also be saved as an example and put on our Facebook group. So if you choose to write directly into the file, you can do that. If you need to make yourself a little note out to the side of your document, like over here in pencil, that I want to start talking about young children's learning, my role as a teacher, whatever, you know, space it out. Make sure you get all these points. All right, so let's just start throwing some pasta at the wall. When I say throw some pasta at the wall, that means let's toss some ideas out and see which ones sound good to us. So just off the top of your head, this can come from any part of your textbook. Why? Because we've done the whole textbook now. The textbook is your oyster. So let's think about some things that we've learned in the class or that we already knew. How do young children learn? What are some key things we need to keep in mind about how kids learn? throw some ideas out there. It can be out loud or it can be in the chat. I'd like everybody to have a go. All right, I see my first one coming into the chat already. Through play. I think that's valid, so I'm going to write that down. Young children learn through play. All right, I also see another through play. I see an engagement. Children need to be actively engaged in play in order to learn. Children, so an example of that could be, this is frequently, I'm looking now at what you all are writing and adding to it through storytelling, songs, and making activities hands-on. All right. That's a good start right there. Okay. I'm not going to write it all there because I don't want you all to just say, oh, she's written everything already. There's nothing I can change or add to it. It's perfect. So we all know we're not perfectamente bien. So this is a start. A paragraph needs some more sentences than this, yes? Because that looks kind of measly and small. It needs to be fleshed out. Okay? Questions about that first paragraph? Spell check doesn't like that I put in order there, so we'll take it out. So this is going to be a whole paragraph. This is just a little start for you. Thank you, everybody that contributed to that. Now I'm going to look at the next part. So this next part says, look at what you just wrote. If you believe young children learn through play, if you believe they need storytelling, songs, and hands-on activities, what is your role as a teacher? Give me some suggestions.
Or engage to play, or engaging to play. Through play, you could be that that's basically like that child, that second kid, you're playing with them. When you're storytelling, you can be the characters in the book, getting them to learn different ones, or the song, you can be, the singer, or the whatever, that's like the wheels on the bus, you can be the bus, you can be the wheels, like different parts, so that they can engage with them and being an hands-on with them.
So I'm trying to think of how to make this a proper sentence. 1 minute. Since children need to be engaged, my role as a teacher is to teach them songs and sing with feeling and joy. You also mentioned being a play partner. Since children learn best through play, my role as a teacher is to be a play partner. Modeling, because I see somebody put the word modeling how to use social skills, with social skills and language during play. Okay, do you see how I took one and made it, used it below? Does anybody have questions on how that works?
No.
Okay. And here's the third question. And I think I'm gonna move it down to another page just so we can look at it by itself. All right, this one is again some self-reflection for you. Beyond being a teacher. So being a teacher is making the lessons, doing the singing, doing the play partnering, right? Beyond that, think about, reflect, think about, and write about what you believe are other important parts of your role in the lives of children and families. What do you do for children and families beyond just teaching? Let's have some ideas. Let's help each other think this through.
Sometimes you check on the kids, like if something traumatic happened or there's a change, in the family, you kind of want to check up on the family, on the kid. Oh, how are they doing with this change? Because it affects them in the classroom as well.
Whenever I'm gonna put big change occurs in their lives. Showing I care about their well-being and want to support their child. Okay, thank you, Lydia. I'm looking in the chat. I see comfort, I see communication. Christina, would you like to elaborate on what you mean by comfort?
I would say how that we were just talking about if something is like changed with them, like making sure they were okay. That's how I was saying comfort as well.
All right. Want to provide the child with comfort, a caring connection.
Even like if they're coming into because they're in and out of our classroom like so quickly also, I feel like, especially in my center, and so I feel like just even transition, like it takes them a while to get used to us and the room and each other, and we comfort them that way to make them feel okay.
Okay, so that even goes back to being, does anybody remember what we called that? The attachment figure, right? The secure attachment figure. Does everybody remember that term?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you see kind of where this is going? And Helika had mentioned communication. You could talk about beyond teaching and learning how important communication is with families and within the center. Does anybody have any comments or questions or anything to add to this before we close it up? Okay, and Deborah had mentioned on communication as well. Keeping up communication with families as they go through those transitions between classrooms. So the family doesn't feel cut adrift. They feel like they know you've still got their back as they're moving to another room. Yep. So you're writing a paragraph here on stuff you do that is beyond teaching. You could put maybe that you provide resources. Remember, we created that resource list last class. You could be discussing how you provide resources for families that could be going through difficult times and letting them know what's available in the community. Perhaps somebody mentioned earlier that you talk to families during center-wide open houses and things like that. So you could mention something about that there. A lot of us did outside of school fiesta activities with families this week. So it could be something like I support my community and family partnerships through our fiesta parade we had. Or maybe you do a Halloween parade or something out in the community with your center. All those things count. Y'all got really quiet on me now. I don't know if that's because we're okay or if it's because you're thinking really hard. I'm going to assume it's because you're thinking really hard. Writing notes, thinking hard. If for some reason you don't feel like you can pull the examples that you're wanting from the Facebook page, you can email me and request documents that way as well. Texting doesn't work very well for me, but email does. Trying to think other ways daycares and schools can reach out. Somebody had mentioned the food bank stuff that their school used to do. So that could be a connection there too, right? Or it could be maybe your school loans out books to families for them to read at home. Or maybe your school does a diaper drive once a year to help the community. All right, I'm going to save this as an example. And it will, oh, see, somebody put toy drive at Christmas. Yeah, totally. All right. I am now going to talk to you about how to set up your binder, setting up your portfolio. All right. So in order for us to discuss this, you will need your yellow book and you will need your portfolio. In the yellow book, I would like you to turn to the back and flip forward until you see page number. Oh goodness, where is it? I went too far. It is page 133. Okay. It looks like this. Everybody open to page 133. It's important. It says at the top of page 133, my CDA professional portfolio. I believe in the past, we have already written our name on it. Is that correct? Or am I thinking of a different class? It's not correct, Deborah. I'm thinking of a different class.
We did the family questionnaire. We put our name at the top.
Okay, so on this one, the My CDA professional portfolio, go ahead and write your name on it. And at the very bottom, it wants you to sign it and put a date. For the date, you can either put today's date. The class officially ends April 30th. You could put April 30th on as the date. I don't think the actual date matters a whole lot. I'd like you to look at the chart on this page. Do you see how the chart says tab on the upper left corner of it? TAB, tab. Do you see that? It has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Does everybody see that? I would like you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Stefania.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next to the letter A, I'd like you to put a number 1. Next to letter B, I'd like you to put number 2. And go all the way down. There's 10. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5, F is 6, G is 7, H is 8, I is 9, J is 10. And you're just writing that really little next to the letter. Why? Because if you look in your binder, you will notice that you have tabs that go from number 1 to number 10. Do you see that? So this chart tells you what goes in each tab. Okay. Now I'm going to show you, keep this open. All right, put it to the side and keep it open. Like take it like this and set it to the side. I'm going to open a more I made yesterday. No, don't put the number where the check mark goes. Thank you for asking. Put the number next to the actual letter. So like it says A right there, just write a little number 1 next to it. Did you do it with a pencil, Amy? All right. Well, don't worry about it. You can't undo pen. No te aflijas. All right. I'm going to set this to the side and I'm going to open. Yesterday, I made this chart and I wrote out what each one of these things is to help you. All right. So let me open it up. I am going to put this in Facebook for you. And I can also attach it to the chat, I believe. She said with some confidence. There we go. Andale. All right. So I tried to make it look as similar to the one on that page that we just looked at as possible. So I'm now going to pull this in front of me and look at both of them at the same time. Okay. So let's look at the first line. It doesn't have a letter next to it. It's just blank where it says tab, correct? It says my CDA professional portfolio cover sheet. And then in parentheses, it says this document. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to take this paper when you're ready. You don't do it yet because I want you to get everything else sorted out before you start ripping things out of this book. Okay. Do you understand? You're not ripping stuff out of this book until you're done with everything else on this page. Why? Because you're going to have a lot of documents spread out in front of you, and I don't want these to get lost. But when you're ready, make whatever note you need to yourself on a piece of paper that this, page 133, and look, I put it in this document, what page it was right here. It's page 133. That's going to get ripped out. You're going to have to make some holes in it and put it at the very front of your binder. When I say the front of your binder, I mean this stuff right here, you're going to take out. You're going to take out your agenda. And take it out. This page will be ripped out, page 133, and it'll go where your agenda used to live. Make whatever note you need. I recommend making notes in pencil if you're going to write in this book. Once you have done it, you can put a check mark in the box. Okay? Does anybody have questions about that before we move on to the next one? All right, I'm going to move now to the line that has A and 1 in the front of it. All right, when it says 1, it means tab number 1, right? Everybody's got a tab number 1. You turn your tab number 1. So you grab a hold of tab number 1 with your fingers and you'd flip it over. You're now in between. So tab number 1 is on the left side and tab number 2 is on the right side. So this is everything that goes in tab number 1. All right, so let's look. I have a list for you for each of these tabs. All right, the list, these things should go in the order I wrote them in this list. So I'm again looking at this yellow book. It says page 135 right there. So 135 is the next sheet. It looks like this. Everybody put your eyes on page 135, please. Let's look at it. It says you need to write your name on it. So go ahead and do that. Write your name on it. And then it has a chart. It says CDA subject areas on the chart. And this is you verifying that you have done this class and you've attended everything. And if you haven't attended, you've watched the video for it, okay? And you've read the book. So for each of these, you're going to initial where it says, please initial below. An initial is the first letter of your first name and the first letter of your second name. So for my name, Lillian McFarland, my initials are LM. So I'm going to initial in this box. Each of these boxes I'm going to initial that I've attended the class, I've read the book, and I'm ready. Does anybody have a question about initialing here? And then at the bottom, it has a signature and a date. You can put the same date you put on the other one. You can initial it now, Angelica. This is an honor system. This means that it's all going to be done by the time they see you. Okay. The class is officially over at the end of April, so you could put that 4:30. So that's the sheet we're looking at right here, this summary of my CDA education, page 135. That goes right here, right? Tab 1. That's going to be the first thing in tab 1. So when you're ready, you're going to rip it out and make sure it goes to the beginning of tab 1. All right, what else is going to go in tab 1? Let's look. The next thing you're going to have in tab 1 is a copy of your high school diploma or a copy of your GED. Why am I asking for a copy and not the original? Can anybody give me an idea? Why do I want a copy and not the original?
Because they would keep it.
Well, number one, you're going to have to make holes in it, right? So you'd be messing it up.
Right.
And you don't want to do that. Number two, you only have one copy. You don't want to, you don't want it to get lost. So make a copy of it and you keep the original one safe so it doesn't get lost. All right, so you're going to put a copy. The next thing you're going to have a copy of, I'm highlighting it as we go through each one, is a copy of the certificate I am going to give you. Do you have it yet? Do you have a certificate from me yet? No. You're going to get one from me. When I give it to you, you can put it in here.
Miss Adrian, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be posting this video on YouTube as well? Or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I also have a question. If I no longer have the possession of the high school diploma, can I put in the university? It's been so long.
I understand.
And I've moved a lot of times.
Yep, I understand. So look at what your university has, because somewhere, like in my university stuff, it says received high school diploma on it. You know, like on a transcript or something, it'll be like high school diploma, Breckenridge High School, 3.0 GPA.
Yeah, I have a copy of my transcript. That'll work.
That too. I have that.
Does it have that you have your GED or diploma in there somewhere written? Look for it. I bet it does. Amber asks if you can put it in a sheet protector. Yes. Typically we use sheet protectors, but I didn't have access at the moment. If you want sheet protectors, email me, let me know, and I can deliver some to you when I deliver your certificate. Okay. All right, and the last thing you're going to have in tab 1 is copies, again with the copies, right? I'm all about having a copy instead of the original. Copies of any certificates for trainings you've done this year. Or transcripts from college or technical schools, okay? Copies, not the originals, just the copies. That's everything that goes in tab 1. Once you go through this, I highly recommend that you make a mark each time you put one of these things in your binder. And once you know that every single one of these bullet points is in your binder, put a check mark. Okay? It's the same concept as the check mark spot here on this thing that we looked at, that we put the numbers 1 through 10 on. It has where you can check it off after you've done each thing. I recommend using this detailed one first. It might be easier for you, and then coming back to this and putting check marks. So that's tab 1. Let's say, yes, we have done tab 1. Yes, 2022 only, Deborah. So for certificates of training, that's for this year only. Transcripts can be for anything, any year. You don't want to put a bunch of training certificates from the last 5 years though. But if you have transcripts, it's usually just a couple sheets of paper. Okay. All right. So let's say we've got all of tab 1 done. When we go to tab 2, I'm going to put my fingers and pinch the number 2, flip it. And now this is where my tab 2 stuff goes. So the number 2 is going to be on the left side and number 3 is going to be on the right. So this is everything that goes in tab 2 right here. The first thing is page 141 in this yellow book. So I'm going to turn to 141 and put my eyes on it. It is, I think we did this a couple weeks ago, the family questionnaire summary sheet. Is that something we did together as a group?
Yes.
Okay, so you should have your name at the top. Where it asks for your ID number, you don't have that yet. You are going to get your ID number when we meet one-on-one to create your account. So on this family questionnaire sheet, you should have how many you distributed, how many you got back, which needs to be at least half with a little bit more. It should have filled out what your strengths were according to the surveys and what areas the family said you needed to work on. And this then would get ripped out and put in after tab 2. Does anybody have questions about this family questionnaire summary sheet? All right, the next thing on the next bullet point for number 2 are your completed family questionnaires. So the ones that you got back are going to go right after that cover sheet. Just poke some holes in them and stick them in there. And that's it for tab 2. I'm now looking at tab 3. When I'm ready for tab 3, I am going to pinch the number 3, flip it, and all my tab 3 stuff's going to go here. So the tab 3 now is on my left. Let's look at what tab 3 is. Tab 3, the only document that's in tab 3 lives in this book. It is the document that's right after, it's the next page after your family questionnaire summary sheet. It looks like this. Don't start writing on it yet, willy-nilly. All right. You look here on this sheet And it says you're completing boxes A and B only. That means don't fill out any other boxes, just box A and box B. So you can put your finger on box A. It's right here. This is box A. It has the letter A in the upper corner. Box B is right below it. It has the letter B in the upper corner. Those are the only two boxes that you're writing in when you put this in your binder. That's it. So since that is it, you are getting those answers for A and B off your family questionnaire summary sheet. So A, it wants you to write down what you wrote for your professional strength. For B, it wants you to write down what you wrote for your area of professional growth. That's it. I'll give you a moment to process that. And again, if you want those plastic page covers, email me and I can bring you a few when I drop off your certificate.
So we're writing the same thing from the summary sheet, but in the boxes, correct?
So in box A and box B, you are writing what you wrote on the family questionnaire summary sheet in these two spots. So you have something written here, transfer this to box A, transfer this to box B.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, didn't get a response on that, so I'm guessing we're okay. I'm now going to move down to tab 4. So when I'm ready to do tab 4, I am going to pinch tab 4, flip it over, and this is where my tab 4 stuff goes. Tab 4 is now on my left. So let's start with tab 4, what we need and what order it should be in. The first thing, whoops, is a copy of your first aid and CPR card. You're not putting the original because you don't want it to be lost. Put a copy of it. If you don't have one that's current, you need to speak to your director about getting one that's current. It is necessary. The next thing is the sample menu or sample feeding schedule that you have collected from your school. I would highly recommend that every single document you put in here from tab 4 going down, that you make sure that this information, RC11 or CS, whatever this number and letter combination is, I'd make sure it says that somewhere clearly at the top of the page so that the person checking your work knows, oh, this is CS1B without having to read the whole document. Does anybody have a question about why we're labeling it? Okay, so make sure every single page from tab 4 going down has the label on it. If you were using things, the papers that I provided you, they do have a label at the top already, but some people chose to write them out on different things. And if you did, you need to make sure it very clearly has the label of what document this is, and not like reflecting on the sample menu, but just flat out CS1A. Okay. So I'm going to read through this. The first one was a copy of your infant toddler CPR and first aid. The second one is your sample menu. The third one is your sample weekly plan. And on your weekly plan, it says to make sure that it has the age for the plan written on there, or the group name. So if it's for young toddlers, it should say young toddlers. If it's for 2-year-olds or mobile infants, it should say that on it. The next thing is a writing CS1. The CS documents are definitely writing things that you've done. So I gave a description of what you are writing about next to it. Okay. If for some reason this description that I gave you is not enough for you to figure out which one of these is CS1A, you can also look in your yellow book, starting on page 14. It gives you a description of each and every single one of these documents, what you're writing about, what it was for. Okay, that's page 14 to page 20 in your yellow book, where it gives you the descriptions of every single document. So if you read a document and you say, I don't remember what this is about, you can come and look in here if it doesn't make sense what I wrote in this description. Okay. So CS1A was when we talked about our sample menu. CS1B was talking about your room environment. CS1C, we just did that recently. That was reflecting on the weekly plan. Once you have all of those things checked off, you can put a check mark and move on to number 5. Number 5 has a lot of stuff. So we would, to do tab 5, we would pinch tab 5, turn it over, and start putting our things here. So it has all your learning experiences in order. And the order that these numbers are not necessarily the order we did them in class. We followed the textbook in class, but these don't necessarily follow the textbook. So make sure you put them in the correct order. If you wrote on one of the documents that I gave you, it should be labeled, right? If you wrote on one of the documents I gave you, it has a label in the upper left corner. For example, this is a label. See where it says resource collection item 26 on that? That's the label. However, if you did one on your own kind of paper, then you should have RC to whatever number it is labeled at the top. Did that make sense? Okay, cool. Now, those are your learning experiences. I put a space here just because it was a lot to look at and I thought your eye needed a break. There's no way you can put a space in your binder. Don't worry about that. I just put the space to give your eye a break. So the other things you have here are some CS2s. And this one was writing about your physical development activity. This one was writing about your cognitive activity, your creative activity, and your communication activity. Once you make sure you have all of those there, you're going to check it off. I'm looking at tab 6, which is probably old news to you by now, but you'd pinch tab 6, flip it over so it's on your left. And tab 6 has your bibliography. It has CS3A, supporting self-concept and social emotional skills, and CS3B, how you guide behavior. Once you get those all in there, you're going to put your check marks and go to tab 7. Tab 7, flip. I'm not expecting y'all to keep up with me as I'm doing this by actually putting stuff in your binder. I'm just trying to talk you through this document because I understand that you probably have stuff spread out all around you, and it's going to take some time to make sure you have everything. So here are your RC4s and your CS4s. So for your CS, how you ensure families are kept aware of your daily activity. How do you ensure that you are kept aware of their home life and reflecting on family questionnaires? Then you'd check all those off and go to 8. Eight is RC5. RC5 has a sample accident report, a sample emergency form, and a sample assessment form. Remember, if you need more information about those, you can go, let's see, that specifically is on page 16, where it tells you a little bit more about it. And then your writing assignment was CS5A, how you use the observation or assessment tool that you have. And once you've got those, you're going to tab 9. Tab 9. And this is a lot of stuff that you have done recently or it will be due this week. So we have our child care licensing info. That was last week, I believe. Early childhood associations. Just FYI, some of you are writing that Kick-Up is an early childhood association. It's not. It's just an online portal. I don't think it's bad to use it as your third one, but it's not really an association. The next one is child abuse and neglect info and mandatory reporter guidelines. You did that early on in the class. And then things that we talked about today, CS6A, reflect on why you became an early childhood teacher. CS6B, reflect on professionalism. And that's it for tab 9. And then tab 10, all by itself, all by its lonesome, gets your professional philosophy statement. Now, in this binder that I gave you, you'll see after tab 10, you have some loose documents. Does everybody have that? You should. I know I put them in there. Look like this. Here's where we put those documents. I didn't want to confuse you. I want you to get everything in this chart looking beautiful before you worry about the other documents. Okay, so finish this chart first. And here's at the very end, I have where we're going to stick these documents. So the first one is summary of my CDA education. It says to put it in front on tab 1. So we know tab 1, all these tabs already have stuff in them now. These are just going to go, you're going to open tab 1 with all your stuff in tab 1, and you're going to make sure these papers, they're just like a cover sheet. They just go on top of your other stuff. The next one is the beginning of tab 2. Then we have something for the beginning of tab 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the last paper says resources, and that goes at the very end of your binder, the last thing. Now, some of you that did not use all these lovely documents that I copied for you, and they're all blank and they're just sitting here at the front of your binder, those can be taken out. You just want to have the things that are on this document that I just showed you in the binder, and that's it. You don't want blank copies of papers that you chose not to use. That'd be silly. I know you all are thinking really hard and processing really hard right now. I understand. Is there anything I can do to help you with the thinking or processing on this right now?
Would it be best for the pages that are labeled, for example, competency standard, resource collection items to be right at the front as soon as you turn the tab? Because I know there's a title page.
I'd put it like right at the front when you turn the tab over.
Okay, turn it.
So you're talking about these things at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
Go like right after you turn the tab over.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, somebody sent me a text. Let's see what we've got. Somebody has asked me what to do with this page. All right. So you've got some options. For this page, your options are, number one, you could just take it out. That's an option for you. Number two, if you're somebody that really enjoys labeling things, you could write, let me pull this chart up again. On 133. If you're somebody that really enjoys labeling things, you can use the labels that are in bold for these different tabs, and you could write that on here if that's something that appeals to you. It's not necessary. I hope that answers your question. Is there anything else I can do to assist you with processing this? Yep, you are correct, Amber, that labeling page is not, this is not necessary. It's just pretty. It's not necessary. So if for some reason you don't have it, not a problem.